Everyone. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to أعلام وأقلام. I'm Muhammad Hassanin and today I'm honored to have Professor Jonathan Featherstone, a distinguished expert in teaching Arabic to non-native speakers. Professor Featherstone is an honorary fellow at the University of Edinburgh. You might also know him as the author of BBC Talk Arabic and also a contributor to العربية الناس, which he co-authored with Dr. Monda Yunus and others. With him today in this episode, we will explore his integrated approach to teaching Arabic and how these methodologies can transform Arabic education here across the Middle East. Professor Featherstone, it's an honor to have you on the podcast. How are you today? وكيف حالك؟
الحمد لله كله تمام الحمد لله أنا كمان ده شرف ليا جدا عشان
Thank
أكون
you so
هنا
much.
معاك
شكرا
اليوم.
جزيلا لك. Today we've decided to make it in English. We have a message need to be delivered, but inshallah المرة الجاية next time we will be doing this in Arabic. We'll run the interview in Arabic.
إن شاء الله.
شكرا جزيلا. Let's start with your journey, Professor. I'd like always I like to start with this question. You've had an incredible career in Arabic language education. Could you just let us know about how you first get involved in this career, teaching Arabic, and what sparked your passion for this field?
Well, it happened very sort of suddenly. When I was actually studying Arabic and Middle Eastern politics at the University of London at the School of Oriental and African Studies.
Yeah.
And at the Students' Union, there were a group of students that were not doing Arabic, but were planning on traveling to the Middle East.
Yeah.
And they asked me if I would teach them Arabic, some spoken Arabic.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, but this was for free, but I would meet them once a week in the evening. And so I had to think about what I'd already been doing Arabic for I was already in my final year, so I was an advanced student, and these were total beginners. So I had to think about how I would teach them, and also why they wanted to learn Arabic. And these students wanted to learn Arabic because they wanted to spend some time in Arab countries. In particular, they wanted to spend some time in Egypt.
Yeah.
So, and also I had been studying Fusha, and also I'd been studying, modern standard Arabic, as well as I also studied Egyptian Arabic. I had a couple of very good Egyptian professors at the time that taught me Egyptian Arabic. So when I started to teach these students, I had to make up my own little book for them. And I created these two characters, Ahmed and Mona, and so and they were doing this and that in London. No, it wasn't Ahmed. So it was John and Mona. I think I can't remember anyway.
No worries. That was long time ago.
Yeah, so it got me into the thinking about how to make it fun and communicative, and then I decided I enjoyed it so much it made me laugh. I loved it. So I decided that that's what I wanted to do for a long time into the future, which is what I ended up doing.
Yeah, but I want to also to ask you more about your journey. Like you've taught in different parts of this world. I think you've been here in the UAE, and I would like actually you to share your experience. Could you just tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, well, I've actually taught Arabic. Well, I taught Arabic as an Arabic language to non-native speakers in Egypt, in Cairo, because I was involved in an exchange program with the institute, because I worked for the military institute for many years, and we had an exchange program with International House in Cairo, and a colleague of mine came and taught in my place in the UK, and I went out to Cairo to teach. And that was a wonderful experience because I worked with Egyptian teachers. So I was British, but all my colleagues were Egyptian. So I learned so much from them.
Yeah, that was
we shared a lot of ideas.
Enriched experience.
It was great. So that was a great experience. And then later, that was back in 1988. But in 2010, I actually I visited the UAE a couple of times. I came originally with the British University in Dubai to actually visit a number of primary schools where they were teaching Arabic to non-native speakers, because I understand that this is a compulsory subject, that
Yeah,
all
that's great.
children, from whether they're British or Indian or American, they have to do Arabic. And so I sat in on quite a lot of classes. And based on my observations, I then decided, well, I was invited to come back a few months later to do a training course for teachers who were teaching Arabic to non-native children, and it was a 1 week intensive training course in how to make the teaching a little bit more communicative, more modern.
So the whole experience was about MSA or Middle Standard Arabic, or you have also taught the lahjat or عامية مصرية?
No, my approach, you see, I believe that when we teach Arabic to a non-native speaker, we have to have both. So I use this. I believe in a method. It's called the integrated approach, and this is what I was trying to train the teachers to understand. And the integrated approach, which in Arabic is known as al-manhaj or al-manhaj al-mutakamil. So basically, what we do is we teach modern standard Arabic for for reading and for writing. But when we're talking about communication, we teach our students how to speak spoken Arabic. Now, it doesn't matter what kind. Now, in the Gulf, it would be Gulf Arabic, because that's what they need. Because if you go into if you meet somebody or do something social, you'll want to say, I don't know, ايش اسمك or شنو اسمك or whatever, you know, rather than masmuka. This is very, very formal. And this is not what Arabs normally use when they're together. And so you would want somebody who wants to be able to communicate with people in a normal way. So the idea is to help students, teachers teach students how to speak in a natural way, but also to read. But of course, when they're reading, they have to read modern standard. It sounds difficult, but it is really not difficult at all once you get used to the methodology, and the students themselves don't find it difficult either.
Yeah, I think you've pioneered this methodology, actually, Professor. So you're well known, for that. And the point you've mentioned right now, that makes so much sense for me. Actually, I believe that many teachers I know, they struggle to bridge the gap between modern standard Arabic and spoken dialects, and that also make the students feel all the time this a little bit disappointed because they cannot communicate. And this is very common here. Majority of parents, majority of students who have already spent years studying Arabic, they always complain, we are unable, we can't make a conversation with people, with local people, with things like that. So speaking of dialects, how do you think the integrated approach can be, let's say, adapted to meet the unique needs of students in the UAE here specifically? So where dialects, dialects diversity is a key part of everyday life here. Like we have plenty of dialects, so it's not only one dialect, we have people from different parts of the Arab world.
Yes, I understand that. Yes, of course, you have a lot, because I remember, for example, the teachers that I was training, some were from Egypt, and others were from the Levant, from Syria, from Lebanon, Jordan. So what you need to do here is there's something we call it a leveled dialect, which I translated into Arabic as al-lahga al-mukhaffafa, or some people call it al-lahga al-bayda. So what we do here is we're teaching students slightly, it's not a fake language, but a slightly purified Ammiya, or a spoken. I mean, I'll give you an example. If you take a word like in the Levant, they might say, "Oh, هذا رجل ختيار." He's old. Now, ختيار is not very well known outside. So you could say هو كبير في السن.
كبير في السن. And everyone will understand it.
And that would be fine in Morocco.
Absolutely fine, yeah.
So sometimes and then if you take verbs like أنا شفتك امبارح, that is international.
Yes, so everybody will understand it.
Important and if you think about it. Let's say, if I give an example, in London, we also have Arabs, many Arabs from different countries. And
Yeah.
I remember when I was studying, I'll give you an interesting example. I lived in an international student hostel when I was studying in London, and I was very lucky because all the other people on my floor
Mm.
were Arab postgraduate students from nearly there was somebody from Syria, from
Yeah.
Egypt, from Sudan, from Iraq, and from the Yemen.
Yeah, totally
And
agree.
we
I've
would cook
experienced that
dinner.
myself when I was in Glasgow, Scotland. Yeah,
Yeah, and
2015. I remember.
we
Yeah,
would
I've
cook
seen that.
dinner together.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I would have such a wonderful opportunity to practice my Arabic. But
Yeah.
you could tell that somebody was from Iraq, from a bit from the accent, but the vocabulary, because you modify a little bit.
Yeah.
So as a teacher, when you're teaching that, that's what you do. And it's this way a student can learn a kind of a soft Amiya or dialect,
Yeah.
and then they can use it wherever they are. It doesn't matter if the teacher is from the Arabian Peninsula or from Jordan, and also Jordanian Arabic and Gulf Arabic. It's not very different anyway. Actually,
Lots of
if you think about it.
similarities. Lots of
If
similarities.
you
Yeah.
lighten it a little bit,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, and so I've developed some workshop where teachers themselves understand what I'm talking about here. So they discover or they come up with what they think is a lahga al-bayda.
Oh,
And of course, and that is the one that we think works best with the integrated approach.
I think
Basically.
let's shift gears now to talk about teachers training, actually, because you said that teachers need to be trained to know this is Lahga Beda or how to integrate both of these different,
They
let's say,
do. Yeah.
we're not teaching different languages. It's the same language, just to let the people,
Yes.
for those who are unfamiliar with integrated approach, we are teaching the same language, but we
Yes.
mix between the dialects and a little bit the formal language or the MSA, the Modern Standard Arabic. So let me just now talk about another point or another area where you've made also a significant impact, I think. In your experience, Professor Featherstone, what are the most, let's say, important skills an Arabic teacher needs to develop when working with the non-native speakers? Also, taking into consideration the integrated approach as well as a part of this, part of those skills.
Well, I would say probably the most important thing is that you have to love your language. You have to love Arabic very much. And
Yeah.
you also need to make sure that you understand how Arabic works. So it's like, you have to take your language and you have to pull it apart and you have to then build it again in your own mind. Because
Yeah.
your learners, they don't know Arabic. You know it as
Yeah.
the teacher. They don't know. So
Yeah.
you've got to think, how am I going to make this manageable for them? Because it's a little bit like building a house. How do you
Exactly.
start? What do you do? What do you do on the first day
What are the
with your
pillars?
learners?
Yeah, put the pillars, the
And build that.
foundations first. Yeah.
So you need to understand your own language, because what you find is that there are a lot of Arabic teachers, particularly in the UK, that have come to they live in the UK and they're looking for a job, and so they think, oh, okay, I will teach. I'm an Arab. I will teach Arabic. But
Yeah.
then they haven't been trained. So what they think is, oh, I will teach them the way I was taught. But they forget that as an Arab, you already could speak Arabic as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old child.
Yes,
And
exactly.
these people can't speak. So the methodology has to be very different.
Yeah, so
And
back
then
again to the word
secondly,
methodology. Sorry for interrupting you, Professor, but we need actually to focus on this point a little bit more and pay more attention with those words. I mean, teaching Arabic as a second language for non-native speakers is
yes,
completely different game when it comes to native speakers. We cannot use the same methodologies. I want you actually to give us few examples of just let's pick one example. What is the major differences between teaching Arabic for those who already know Arabic, the native speaker, or for non-native speakers?
The major difference is that you are, well, if you want them to be able to speak in a natural way using spoken Arabic, which we were talking about, then the first lesson in the class is going to be أنا اسمي جوناثان إيش اسمك أنا ساكن في لندن وين ساكن هو ساكن إيش اسمه إيش اسمها أو مثلا أنا عندي أخ واحد وأخت واحدة يعني these are basic communicative things that you need to know from day one. So at the end of the class the student can say, oh, what did you do today in your class? Oh, I can say hello, أهلا. I can say my name is Jonathan. أنا من إنجلترا. I'm from wherever. So that has to be. Now, if you're teaching an Arabic at the school, they already know that. They can say they're fluent.
Yes.
Maybe a child may not know complicated vocabulary, but they can manage. They know how to say I live here, my mother, blah blah blah, my father. So I would say that is the biggest difference is getting the learners to communicate in spoken Arabic, and then later they can start to at home for their homework, and then you can start teaching them a few letters, and then they can start writing at home something in modern standard, which they can then bring to you, which you can mark. But in the classroom, they will be speaking in more natural way. And then they can use that Arabic. Once they leave the classroom, they can go out and use it.
That's really insightful, Doctor. So back again to the skills. We need to keep talking about the skills. What are the other skills?
Well, with teacher training particularly, you've got to really teach teachers how to, well, first of all, you talk about skills. There are 4 skills. How do you teach speaking? How do you teach reading? How do you teach writing? How do you teach listening? Because listening is the most difficult for most learners. How do you make that
Which is always overlooked, Professor. It's always overlooked.
Yes. And the other issue, and also how to help students with pronunciation and intonation. Because Arabic has a very different intonation from every language has its own intonation. Arabic has a specific kind of intonation and pronunciation. It's very important because sometimes, if you don't pronounce the words properly, people won't understand what you're saying. Exactly. So you have to, there's how to help. So when you're training teachers, you're giving them the skill. Now, when we say training them on how to teach these things, we also have to show them how to use a course book that they didn't write. I mean, I use my own material, but another teacher may say, okay, I'm going to use this course book. How do you use it in a nice way? How do you design your own drills and activities? Helping teachers learn how to design their own activities, which they can use with their learners. This is very, very important.
Yeah, actually,
how to be creative. How to be creative.
Creativity as well is really important. Yes.
So
I think now we've got like an overview about what are those skills. And now I think this is the time to talk a little bit about your publications and the resources. One of the main factors for teachers to achieve their students' needs or to meet their students' needs to have high quality resources with lots of authentic texts and things like that. So I need also now to speak a little bit about your contribution to the Arabic language education. And you've got such incredible resources like the BBC Talk Arabic. And my question for you, Professor, so what inspired you to create these resources? Like, how did you ensure that these resources meet your students' needs?
Well, I mean, I'm always, when I teach, as I said, when I started teaching back when I was a student, I needed, you can't just walk into the classroom and start a lesson. The most important thing about teaching is preparation.
Exactly.
You have to be well prepared. Now, I have some Arabic, Arab colleagues that they say, oh, I speak Arabic. Why do I need to prepare my, but no, this is not, we're not talking about preparing your language. We're talking about preparing your, what are you going to do? You've got an hour with those students? What are you going to do? For every activity, you need to make sure you have your lesson plan, and you need to know. Now, so A, you have to have a lesson plan, but B,
Okay.
you have to know what material you're going to use. Are you going
Exactly.
to use a book? So I started producing my own material,
That's
which
great.
I used with my students. So I've always produced, and then I also was asked to produce a book. Sometimes you have some organizations where they have an in-house course book. It's not published outside.
Yeah.
It's just used within that institution. And I've produced
Yeah.
a lot of those. But then later on, I was invited by publishers like the BBC and also by Routledge and
Yeah.
others to actually write something, which would then be published widely. So that's and it was because I do it all the time anyway. It's just a part of work. It's not extra work because I do it anyway. And a lot of the material that I have published, I've used myself in class with my students, so I know what works and what doesn't work with
So
that.
that's
If you know what
that
I mean.
was the need. So let's say that the need
Yes.
for those resources, what inspired you to create, is just not for
Yeah,
fun,
and
actually,
also,
not to be an author or
yeah.
just something like that. Yeah, definitely. Looking ahead in the future, how do you see the integrated approach could be involved in the Middle East, like particularly here in the UAE, I mean?
Well, I think I think it's very important that the UAE, the UAE government understands the importance of Arabic. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it a compulsory subject. So
I think
that's very
I
good.
just want to make it clear, Professor, there is a
Yes.
strong focus on innovation in education in the UAE nowadays.
Yes, yes,
They're
and
paying,
that's very good.
yeah, there are lots of works happening here. The last few years, they have a very good vision, even for the next 2 decades of education. And actually, it's one of it's in the center of the government vision. If we would like to, let's say, innovate or have to change something, a particular point or one particular element in our Arabic teaching and learning in the Middle East, what would be that thing, that one single
I
thing?
think that you need to have specific training for teaching Arabic to non-native speakers. This is a very specific skill.
Yeah,
It's because, as we said earlier, learning as a non-native speaker, it's teaching a non-native speaker Arabic is quite different
yeah,
from teaching an Arabic at school. It's a different skill. You need different methodology, and I think that it would be very, very good if there was a solid plan here
yeah.
for establishing teacher training for Arabic teachers who teach Arabic specifically to non-native speakers. That, I think, is the most important thing.
So if we would like just to, that's let's call it a hypothetical question right now, okay? If
Yes.
you will be invited to be a part of a panel or something like that, Professor, and you are about to write down a plan, a well-structured plan to create a training, let's say training course or something like that, what are the main things, like the main points that you need to let's say integrate in your program? Like, what are the subjects of this program? What are the skills that the trainers will gain by the end of this program?
Well, I think first of all, you need to have sessions. There needs to be one part where teachers actually examine Arabic as a language. To
Okay.
know a little bit more about Arabic, where it comes, where it came from, how it works, the different levels of Arabic, whether it's the Quran or Sha'r al-Jahili up
Yeah.
to modern novel, and the dialects and the whole, something you need to really make sure that as Arabic teachers we have a good understanding about what Arabic is as a language. That first of
Yeah.
all, you need that. Then you need to then examine what are the needs, of your learners,
Yeah.
trying to understand why do these people want to learn Arabic? What do you think they need it for? Once they know that
Yeah.
will then help them to tailor they're teaching. And then, of course, during this course, you need to have live teaching practice. So you will want them to teach some students where they're being observed, not just by trainers, but by some of their colleagues, and that they watch them teach, and then we start to look, and they have a couple, more than one opportunity to do this, to teach maybe beginners, maybe at a higher level, intermediate students. So that's very, very important, so that they get and then they get feedback from their peers and from me on how they can improve. And then they have another chance to do it again later in the course. So those are the plus all the things we talked about before, about how to design a lesson, how to plan a lesson, what are the activities that would make it fun, because we need to make it fun, not we want our students to love Arabic, to love their classes. This is so important.
How it looks like in your classes, Professor? Like, I just want to imagine if I'll be in your a student in one of your classes, okay, and I'll be honored and privileged actually to be there. I wish, but if this will happen one day, how it looks like in your class? What you normally start with, and what are the main activities that you pay attention, or you'd like your students to do in regular basis in every lesson?
Well, you would be very busy. Look, first of all, there is a lot
expected, sir. That's expected.
Yes, you would be busy, so you wouldn't be able to sleep for 1 minute. So you would my classes are I try to make them very well structured. So if the class is 50 minutes, there will be several different activities, but based around one theme. I mean, I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're an intermediate student and we're reading a text in Fusha about Tawfiq al-Hakim, the life of Tawfiq al-Hakim. So the first thing, who's a novelist. So the first thing we might do would be, you would speak with your students in small groups about, and I'd give you some questions, and you talk about, do you read? Do you like reading? When was the last time you read a novel? Have you ever read an Arabic novel? And then the other student says, oh, well, yeah. And somebody might say, do you know the name of a novel? So you talk a little bit. So when they suddenly start to read about Tawfiq al-Hakim, they've already been talking about this subject. So when they start reading it, it's not so difficult anymore. And then
that's before even introducing the lesson or the topic for the students. You just giving them the chance to start speaking to each other's. Okay, that's a good way to engage them. Yeah,
of course. And that's great. And then after we've read it, or the students read in pairs, and then if they have any difficult areas, we look at the different words, and then afterwards we then have it could be an interview, and so we pretend that now you're interviewing Tawfiq al-Hakim and you're asking him some questions. We brought him back to life. And so you might say, for example, it will say in the text, ولد توفيق الحكيم في مصر في الإسكندرية عام 1800 إلى آخره. So then the question might be, طيب توفيق الحكيم اتولد إمتى? And so they will discuss it. This is intermediate. هو اتولد فين? طيب, and so on. So it could be a questionnaire or it could be a discussion. So حضرتك اتولد فين? And then the other student will play the role of Tawfiq al-Hakim, and he will answer, because and this is a very good way of bringing this text to life.
So I think that the biggest takeaway for me is you're giving the students the chance to practice what they have gained, what they have learned in every lesson. So that's it. It should be a conversation. It should be an activity at the beginning of the lesson that everyone should be involved. Everyone should be a part of this activity, and you're giving them the chance to practice the language. Okay, I think that also will build on their confidence, and they can feel that they feel more comfortable while speaking with their peers or with other students as well. So, Professor, unfortunately, time is running very, very fast with you, and I would like actually to gain more of your expertise and your experience in this field. Actually, I've been waiting for this for a long, long time, and I'm not sure when will be the second part of this interview. But let me just wrap up. Before we wrap up this, I just want one piece of advice, like for teachers who listen to this podcast or will be listening to this podcast later.
My advice is not to be afraid.
Okay.
Don't be afraid that if you introduce some spoken Arabic into your classes, that your students will get confused or they won't understand. And what I would do is even start off with some general, when you come in, just say, Ahlan, Sabah al-Khair, Kefak, Izaik, whichever is your dialect that you feel comfortable in using. And then sometimes you can start by when, like sometimes it's hot in the class, or you could say to one of them, Yalla, iftah shabak, or, and they will, you can mimic, do this, and they will know what you want. Atini misharif.
Give me something, open the window, all of this simple classroom language that we use.
So even if you're not ready to go deep into the integrated approach, just to start by trying that and using a little bit of more natural Arabic in you, and not to be afraid. There's not afraid of it.
You need also to believe in your students. Sometimes like we are afraid, we are saying, oh, they are not gonna understand this is too hard for them, without even trying. And this is actually one of the mistakes that we do normally as teachers, as trainers, as also professors, no matter which level, which ages you teach. I think that's fantastic advice, and we need actually to start small and then also thinking bigger and bigger. So, well, Professor Featherstone, it has been an incredibly enlightening conversation today. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and giving us so much to think about today. Actually, I've learned a lot, and one of my biggest takeaway from this conversation that you've mentioned is really important, and I would like actually to wrap up with this, end this conversation with, is the teachers need to know the levels of Arabic. This is very, very important. I think we need to have a second part of this conversation talking about levels of Arabic and what we should teach for beginners and what we should teach for the more advanced students, inshallah. So sooner you have to promise me now, because I'm not gonna end this conversation without a pinky promise from you that you're gonna come again for a second part of this, where we can inshallah discover and discuss more about this.
I will do. وعدك.
وعد خلاص حبيبي. شكرا جزيلا. Thank you so much, and until next time, take care and مع السلامة.
Thank you. مع السلامة. Thank you.